But I think that's a good segue. Talking about flak, I think it's a good segue into the ordnance aspect of it. And when I say ordnance, I mean missiles and torpedoes. But I think at the end we'll round it off because mines have actually gotten some development time as of late, and I think we'll
Lots of
finish it up
comments
with,
on mines.
yeah, we'll finish it off with the mines, but let's start with missiles, guys. So same question, and we'll start with Night Cobb because Night Cobb has actually been around actual torpedoes. And so same question as we started off with the guns. How do you feel about the way missiles and torpedoes feel and function right now?
I don't think there's a huge difference. I was looking kind of at their stats from 318 to 319, but let me just talk about the 319 world for a hot second, since a lot of people have had a chance to play the PTU, and I think it's going to be in our hands shortly. If the data mine stats and what we've gathered from the PTU to relieved, I actually feel like some things about missiles have been dialed in appropriately, especially when you talk about the missiles versus torpedoes game. Because I think a base rule should be applied, and that's smaller missiles, less range. They got less fuel to burn, less range. And I don't want to talk about the vacuum of space and all that kind of bullshit. Let's just put that to the side. We've already agreed to suspend disbelief on the space game in a big way. Yeah, it's okay to gamify it. And not only that, but then it also just makes sense from a simple perspective of smaller missiles, less range. Shorter range, they're shorter range missiles, and then you got larger missiles, medium range, larger missiles than that, longer range, right? And then you've got the torpedoes in their own category. And I think that's appropriate because torpedoes, in my opinion, should be really hard to spoof or flare off, if you want to, whatever terminology you want. Bottom line is really hard to shake them, right? Torpedoes are larger, slower, but they have better guidance systems. They have better tracking capabilities. Now, for fighters, that shouldn't really matter in the long run, because they should also not be very maneuverable. So, fighters should be able to not so much flare them off, but outmaneuver them, when a torpedo is closing in. Capital ships should be living in gross fear of torpedoes. And that's why I actually do like the flat cannon idea, because what capital ships should be doing with torpedoes is we need a screen, whether that's we have a Gatling turret, a dedicated Gatling turret, like even the Perseus does. And I look at the Gatling turrets too at like a certain size, it's like a Sea Whiz. Yeah, like a little mini Sea Whiz right there that's gonna, shoot down an incoming torpedo. But flat cannons would be another appropriate way to deal with it on ships with maybe less point defense. Maybe they replace a couple dedicated, what could have been, anti-mid-range ship weapons, like if they had to deal with like Connies or Corsairs, and they say, nah, it's going to be a flat cannon. And that's what we use as a screen for those, size 9 torpedoes or whatever. And I love the idea, not even just from a ship perspective. This is where I feel like flat cannons make sense for size 9 torpedoes, because I was just thinking about Jumptown the other day, right? Like, if you put flat cannons on one Centurion and you parked it at Jumptown, like, that's how you deal with the Moabs. That's how you deal with the Eclipses coming in and strafing with size 9 torpedoes against the ship you're trying to load up drugs with. That's a good conscious decision to make, in my opinion, for okay, there's a weapon and I've got a counter for it. But I don't like how easy it is to, in some cases, flare off torpedoes, because they are, in most modern times, the torpedoes, because they're so large and because they are, they've replaced a lot of the, a lot of the size, the fuel, the long range and stuff like that. It's all about the tracking capability, the ability to find, acquire, and maintain a target. It's not to say you can't spoof them. We can spoof torpedoes in real life. But it's not easy. And it should be one of those things that, like, the moment, in the submarine community, the moment somebody says torpedo in the water, there's a strong percentage that it's not going to go well for you. On that same line, proximity damage, when one of those goes up, should be, I think, comparable to the way the Moabs detonate.
Oh yeah.
Like you got to kill that thing early. If it gets too close, the proximity damage alone is going to potentially disable your ship or outright kill it.
Well,
so
if your shields are up, and I feel like you should get shook up, but I don't know. Like, well, and this is going to depend
But
on
a perfect
on the ship.
example of this, tree.
If you're a Connie in the wrong spot, the wrong time, and you're near
you're
a size
gone.
9 going off, then you're going to have a really bad day. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Obviously,
But
size matters in that game.
Right now, what we have to do is we have to fire missiles at an Idris, wait for it to flare, because then we know we have a block of time where it can't flare again. And that's when the WISE or the pre-coordinated retaliator dumps as many torpedoes into it as possible.
Yeah, and I'm down with that gameplay. And I even like the idea that the Eclipse in that scenario is actually not even waiting on that. They're coming in at high speed to give the weapon more velocity on its initial track, and they're dumbfiring it. And that way, it's not even a matter of, well, if I can't achieve a lock, I will just literally point straight at you and gunslinger style drop this torpedo on a direct velocity at you because I know you're too big, I'm too close, and the weapon's moving too fast for you to dodge it now. Like, that's great gameplay, in my opinion. I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of goes back to my original statement. I feel like we're getting real close on range, speed, and size differential. Because right now, if you look at like 319 stats for size 1 missiles, they go out to maybe like 9,000 meters. They've got a better minimum lock range and distance and stuff like that, just like you would in, say, DCS, right? If I'm carrying medium air-to-air missiles, so AMRAAMs or something of that nature, right? I'm not using those when I'm getting in close to the knife fight of less than 5 nautical miles away from somebody. At that point, I'm switching to Sidewinders, which are much smaller with missiles, and changing the game in that right. And don't get me wrong, there's obviously, I don't want to get into the Sidewinders versus like radar cross-section discussion yet, but still, there's just a range differential, right? I guess Sparrows would probably be what I've used instead. Anyway, they have that now. And I think what we just need to dial in is tracking capabilities for the different signatures. I think they really need to start to matter more. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. And EM is like the great equalizer right now. Like, they're really going to have to adjust some balance on like damage, I feel like, for EM missiles, because it's really hard in the game. And this kind of goes into other things getting balanced. Like, it's really hard in the game right now to reduce your EM signatures to the point where, it's capable. Sometimes for a little while, if you were in a size 2, like a heavy fighter with a size 2 shield or 2 size 2 shields, like the Vanguards, like, you're not spoofing EM missiles anymore unless you drop your shields. Like, that was a legit thing for a second. You could have a flare count of like 8, 10, on auto, 1 click, 8 flares out right then and there. When somebody fired a size 2 EM missile at you, you are not dodging it. It's getting you. So, there was that value to it that made them a little too effective in that category. And I had thoughts. I was like, man, how do you balance it? You need a good counter to this. That's not just, I mean, it was good. Some pilots started taking their shields down if they started realizing their enemy combatant was like firing EM weapons, and they'd be like, well, I'll just drop my shields and hope the armor holds and flare off the missiles and then bring the shields back up once they're out of missiles. And don't get me wrong, that's interesting gameplay, but it was a little bit one-sided still. I think my opinion would be is if EM missiles are that good and you can't do anything necessarily to drop the EM rate, then I think you got to strengthen, or you got to weaken the damage of EM missiles. Maybe all those complex electronics to track electromagnetic signatures reduces the warhead payload significantly. So maybe that's the balance. Because right now, that's where we're not quite balanced. Is almost all size 1 missiles, we're talking about 100 or 200 hit points of difference. Maybe 300 at the outset.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that game. Size 2 is kind of similar. Like size 3 is really rocking the same thing. And then obviously, the higher up you get than that, it doesn't even really matter what type you're buying, except, what they track. So it's all about choosing, what do I want to track their heat signature? And because we don't have heat in the game, that one's actually easy to maintain low, and then much easier to flare off. Okay, well, cross section, that's very variable based on the way the ship is designed. I do like that idea, but I don't know. It's hard to see too much of a difference in cross section and the way they affect missiles. And EM is like the god missile right now, in my opinion, because very few ships have EM signatures that they can dial below 7,000. Light fighters are the closest that get there. So, EM, things like maybe this new snub fighter, maybe that's the domain of the snub fighters, right? Maybe they're the ones that are like, look at EM missiles and they scoff, like, ha, ha, I'm super tight, and cross section at the same time. Maybe heat is going to be the only weakness that, a snub fighter has for its maneuvering thrusters and shit like that. I don't know. That's where I feel like the balance game is with missiles is how easy is it to spoof it? Are we at the right place for that? And is there an actual value in choosing one missile type versus another significantly, or are we we're going to end up in the same spot where everybody just starts packing EM missiles? Because that's pretty close to where we are right now, in my opinion. Even me as an Eclipse pilot, you know what I pack every time? It's like the first thing I go change out. EM torpedoes. Like, hell no, I'm not going to let a hammerhead flare off incoming torpedo. I'm going to pick EM because the EM signature on a fucking hammerhead is ridiculously high. It's like 200,000 or something like that. It's not quite that high, but it's high. So they have to like shoot it down. That's my general rule with how I play with the hammerheads and stuff. And the same goes for when I'm using the torpedoes against like larger targets like Valkyries. It's like, no. They ain't dodging size 9 torpedoes if their EM's that high. Even a Hurricane struggles with that unless they drop their shields. So,
Atiri, now that Nycob's done
monologuing. Sorry, my bad.
No, but I appreciate you make a lot of really good points though, and yeah, I really can't disagree with much on that. But I'm going to let Atira go first before I add my 2 cents. Atira, how do you feel about missiles and torpedoes right now? What are your thoughts?
So I wrote a lot. Well, I didn't have quite the passionate, detailed analysis that Cobb had there, but I did say, yeah, they're too easily spoofed. I think, especially torpedoes. But so I want to zero in on one of the follow-on questions that was specifically missiles, torps dealing different types of damage. And I'm gonna get on my soapbox, and I'm gonna say they need to adjust the concept of the data spike missile.
Oh,
right. So it is the stupidest concept in the world. I'm sorry, whoever wrote this, that you want to like stick a needle inside an aircraft and make it stick while that, at a random point so that you can hack into a system. So I actually sat on with Jiro for like an hour today and we kind of walked through stuff. And one of the ideas that came out of that was it needs to be a nanite missile. So just simple, we're 900 years in the future, they're going to have nanites. We got some limited nanites now. Bottom line is you don't have to actually penetrate the hull necessarily. You just have to break the missile on the hull. No explosion, no nothing, but it releases nanites. Nanites infect the ship. They have limited power. And so let's see, what do we say? So tier 1 of this would be, it would attack components. Tier 2 would be attack components and relays, right? And then one of the things that we talked about when we talked about that is maybe, and what that allows you to do is the same thing as the data spike missile, right? Hack into systems and influence the ship, but in a more believable, physicalized way. Another reason is you don't have to track the missile on the side of the ship, and you don't have to visually show nanites ever. So once the missile strikes, that entity is gone. It's just all background work. But you might have to shut down your ship or systems on your ship to get rid of them. So maybe they draw power from your ship to continue operations if you shut down your ship. Or in the case of a larger ship, you shut down portions of your ship to kill off the nanites that have infected those portions of the ship using relays, right? To then get back in the fight. Otherwise you get hacked. I don't know. We were playing with it. The bottom line is that data spike missiles as an idea is not really a viable thing. You can instead use something like nanites that would allow you a similar functionality without the silliness of having to stick a missile inside of a hull. Other than that, I mean, Nightcob covered everything. He's got it down. So
Okay. So
his spiel was great.
I agree. The majority of the spiel was good. The only thing that I have to say about, and really not missiles, well, the only, in terms of EM, I think that the way you could potentially balance EM would be in terms of say your lock-on range, where if you have your electromagnetic signature, okay, here's your signature for the amount of power you're putting out, and if you you could say, and this isn't going to be realistic at all, but you could say that across the vastness of space, your electromagnetic signature dissipates with particles much more quickly than you're firing thrusters against the blackness of space, and you're going to just show up like a Roman fucking candle. But whereas your EM signature dissipates much more quickly, and that's a range for lock-on thing versus your heat, where you throw cross section in there is based off of your orientation to them, and material, that sort of thing. That would be my only thought about how you could balance that versus what they're doing right now. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I'll say this. I don't know if this is true or not. I've noticed, and I noticed it most during Xenothreat. So take it with a grain of salt, because there was a lot of server issue too. But I've noticed it, and I was kind of curious about whether or not that is actually a thing. I'm noticing that signature more seems to be related to lock-on distance, because I was noticing I would have the red, like the missile would actually like have done this little like okay do, but it would be red on a ship, and it would not go green until I got within a certain distance. But it was one of those things like, I'm within range, why don't I have good lock? And I wondered, I was like, man, is it because their signature for the type of missile I'm using is not good enough for a solid lock from that range? You know?
Because
it was during the time of. That's what you wanted, though, right? That's what you're talking about, just to be clear?
Yeah, because the other thing with that is the environment could play into that. If you're at the Xenothreat area, which is a very, space dust, lots of space fog, that would be that entire space is its own object container. It's within the game. And so that entire area has an impact on how far your energy signature is detectable in. But maybe it doesn't dissipate, maybe that doesn't block heat as much, but it does make it so that your energy signature is absorbed by the environment. And it's totally there's no science behind that whatsoever. It's just a gamification for balance purposes, because that way, okay, we're going to this area for a patrol, or maybe we're going to be operating in this system, and we know that we're going to be in a nebula. Okay, let's not bring the EM missiles, because those are not going to work as well. Because that's a big, there's a lot of places, if you look at the lore, which is what I do, there's a lot of areas in the game that have massive nebula. There are systems that are just an entire nebula. The entire thing is a gas cloud with planets in it. So, that could be, decision making. You're going to be running a patrol through a gas cloud area around a Lagrange point, or the El Cibre belt in Nyx, which is where Delamar is. that whole area is supposed to be a nebula that's basically wrapped around this asteroid belt. So, okay, you have a bunch of asteroids and you have a nebula. Don't bring your cross-section missiles and don't bring your EM missiles. Bring your heat-seeking, because you're going to lose your lock with the all the asteroids and everything and have a hard time differentiating. You have the environment making your EM dissipate. That would be how I would go about balancing that. It's an environmental choice. Again, right tool for the job, right location. The only other thing I had to add onto torpedoes is, if torpedoes are huge, they should have lots of fuel for burn, but they are huge and heavy. So just like capital ships, their maneuverability should be
slow.
Absolute, slow and poor maneuverability. Turns on
agree.
A 1 mile track.
Stop blowing holes in my ship!
Yay! I love that one. You guys couldn't hear those, but keyboard smash played the little sound. So like. You talked about firing a size 9 at a Valkyrie. You shouldn't be able to spoof it because it's got a giant scanner on the nose of this thing with all the computing power and that it needs in order to be able to continue to maintain a lock on what it needs to. But anything moving at an appreciable speed should be able to easily dodge just by going in the changing direction faster than the torpedo can, because the torpedo should be able to go and make a curving sweeping turn in order to continue to track with said capital ship that's moving at an oblique angle to it, but only at like 100 meters per second or whatever. Do that whole deal versus the missiles should be able to quickly bank and turn and change direction, and be even the maneuverability should scale based off of the size. But then as soon as you get to size 5 torpedo, it should be a pretty significant jump up from size 4. But that would also be how I differentiate size 5, size 7, and size 9 and and beyond would be your a size 5 torpedo has a order of magnitude bigger payload than a size 4 missile. But it's far more maneuverable than a size 9 torpedo, allowing for you to specifically target specific sections of a ship. And that's where you get you're targeting say a Polaris, or Polaris on through Javelin even, and you have scanned it and that they're right here is where there's a power plant, or you're aiming for this specific thruster. Well, the size 9 may probably has a good chance of getting of hitting or getting close enough to cause AOE damage, but you're not going to specifically take out that thing that you're wanting to take out in order to, or a specific turret. And that would be.
Are you arguing the difference between size 9 and size 5 torpedoes, or the difference between a size 5 torpedo and a size 5 missile in terms of accuracy and less AOE? Just so I understand.
Missiles stop at size 4.
There are,
as soon as
there is a size 5 missile.
Yeah,
there is a size 5 missile.
What is it?
It's the Scimitar.
I thought they were torpedoes from 5 and up. I'm sure chat will correct us.
There's a difference, and I know because when I owned a Gladiator, right? Hold on,
The Gladiator is a torpedo bomber, though.
Calm down. I know that.
The Gladiator can carry size 5s, and then it also has wing mounts that are not size 5s.
Stalker 5s. There's Stalker 5s. And there's Scimitar 5s. One is a torpedo. The other is a missile.
Well, I did not know there were size 5 missiles.
Yeah, the Stalker 5s. The Stalker 5s are the torpedoes that are universal between because there's only one size 5 torpedo. They're universal between what's the Harbinger? The Harbinger uses size 5s, and then the Gladiator, and then the Scimitar 5s are actually. It's hard to tell whether they're torpedoes or missiles, but they are not exchangeable between into the slots for the Gladiator or the Harbinger. Like you can't trade them out. And I think it's
That's
because
interesting. I
they're
guess you
labeled
could
as missiles.
Make sense in that, the size 4 missile wouldn't have the range that the size 5 torpedo would, but it also wouldn't have the payload. But that would be the differentiation for me, in that it's a size 5 missile. It has it's the longest range missile. You would use that against a Corsair or Connie.
There's actually a Reaper size 5 too.
But then the size 5 torpedo would be the warhead that you need in order to take out a turret on a Javelin, or to be able to do enough damage to hit a specific area on a Polaris to knock out a power plant or a shield generator. That sort of specific thing, because that's the kind of gameplay that was in Wing Commander and the Descent Free Space series, where you don't have the giant torpedo for doing for actually killing the ship. You have the smaller, much more nimbler torpedo, and this is what you want in order to disable certain things on the ship, knock out its teeth or knock down its defensive capabilities. And that's the kind of gameplay that I'm really interested in. And I think that's the way that you make the Gladiator or the Harbinger, right? Yeah, Harbinger size 5 torps, right? Yeah, that's the way that I see those becoming viable. In that those size 5 torpedoes are very with how fast they are, they'd be extremely difficult to shoot down. And unless your flak wall is in the right place, those are gonna hit. And you're gonna lose, have something be damaged or potentially lose, that power plant, that turret over there. But it's not gonna, you're not gonna destroy the capital ship with a size 5. You need the size 9s to really knock down that HP value, really blow a hole in the size of the ship. But for knocking out teeth, individual teeth, I think that's where the size 5 should play into, instead of using them for, you can use it to take out a Corsair, if you can get a hit, or a Connie, it might still be difficult to dodge those, but if you hit them, you're really going to put a hurt on them. But I think the primary role for a size 5 torpedo should be, targeting specific components, specific weapons on larger ships. A size 5 torpedo, firing those at a hammerhead, the hammerhead's going to have to, really watch out for those and try and, duck, dodge, dive in order to make sure those don't hit the turret and, knock out its teeth, one at a time. That's my thoughts on those. Next question. Go ahead.
Just an interesting note. So I happen to Urkel's real convenient. Plug for the site. It let me just basically arrange all the size 5s. So they all have torpedo-ish speeds. But to your point, and I'm looking at 319 specifically, they all have speeds that are almost twice, in some cases, what the size 9s are. So size 9s usually top out around 550 meters per second in 319. And all of the size 5s are around the 800 to 900 range. It's actually interesting. There's more variation in the size 5. I'm going to assume these are all torpedoes now. Mainly because their damage complement is within like 3,000 and their speeds are all relatively close. So now I'm starting to wonder if it's a bug on the Gladiator. I would like to know if we can actually exchange the torpedo types. CIG, if we can't exchange the torpedo types on the Gladiator, please fix that. But like what I like is there's big differences. One of them is really interesting. The scimitars, the minimum lock range is only 50 meters. The other 3 types, it's you're not firing those less than 1.7 kilometers, but you can point blank practically
that's gotta be a
scimitar
typo,
and still lock it. I don't know.
No,
I hope so.
Left off the 17 on front. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
No, note though, it's got a way less. It's got a much lower speed.
Time.
It's got a really long lock time, and it's got a significantly slower speed. Interesting. I don't know. Interesting on all counts and stuff like that. And again, it goes back to this balance
We'll get
thing
the
where I look
Harvey
at
out
these.
and try and play with that next time we get on. How about that?
Yeah, I'm
All
down.
right.
So sorry, side note there. I was looking at that and I was like, hey, at least at the bare minimum though, your size 9s are significantly different than what they used to be from the size 5s, I think, for speed of the projectile. Size 9s are real slow comparatively. Almost half.
Size 9s should be if you are pointed in the right direction, and as long as you see them within a decent time frame, they should be relatively not difficult to shoot down. If you're equipped appropriately, you should be coordinating with your bombers that have size 9s in order to get multiple torpedoes in the water, so that way multiple turrets would have to be engaged to get all of them. You're not going to be one guy shooting down 7 torpedoes. You need to have a coordinated strike. But if you're one retaliator, and your torpedoes are all staggered and they're all coming from the same direction, well, that's not good tactics. You didn't do your job right. But if if you're multiple retaliators and you're staggering them and you're jinking coming in from different directions, so it's difficult to target them. You need to make the turret gunner's job difficult for him, because otherwise, it should be relatively easy. I think that's where you differentiate the Eclipse from the Retaliator, and that the Eclipse being able to get in closer due to not being detected is what gives them makes it so you have less time to see the torpedo, but they only have 3. That's good balance, good gameplay.
Now, don't be wrong. I'm with what Juro pointed out, right? Like, these are velocity standalones of the missiles. I am firm in that they should continue with the idea of, like, I can add velocity to a torpedo, at least initially, with ship speed. Like, if I dump that torpedo at 500 meters a second, well, that's 500 meters plus whatever I've got from the speed of the torpedo. So,
that's a good segue into the next point I wanted to ask you about. And I'm going to ask Atira first on this one. Because I don't think we need to talk about damage types for ordnance. I'm big bada boom. That's it. None of this
kill it, CIG. That was an interesting thought that you had of, like, IR or heat damage. Or was it energy, physical, and distortion for the EM cross-section and infrared missiles? Kill that discussion from now on. Just don't. You don't want to do it. Missiles be missiles. They explode. They go boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's fill the missile with
I think
some sort
they
of magical space
like
goo that does something weird.
Or something, but yeah.
Now I'm okay if you have
a payload game.
If it's not a traditional explosive, maybe the warhead has some sort of EM radius. Just like if you had I don't know, something to think about for the really big ones.
I like the idea of EMP missiles, right?
There's not a dedicated one.
He's rolling his eyes, but
no, I think that the size 12 torpedo on a Javelin should be like some sort of nuclear warhead. And if you're a fighter that's nearby when that thing goes off, then you just took the EM, blast radius from that nuclear warhead and knocks out your electronics for a certain period of time, and you tumble off into space.
Ooh, now we're stacking damage types.
But like a size 5 or size 7, size 9, no, it's an explosive warhead. That's it.
Oh man!
But
maybe later down the road. That's a long time from now discussion.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, but this is something that we didn't really talk about with the guns. Well, we did a little bit. We brought it up a little bit, but I think it's potentially more pertinent with when it comes to ordnance because of dodging, and what you just talked about, Night Cobb, the intrinsic speed. How do you see missiles and torps changing with master modes? Atira, you first.
That's not what I thought you were going to ask. I think they're going to get more accurate. I mean, you won't be able to burn out at 1,000 meters per second, right? Which that's all. I mean, I think it's just going to be harder to dodge them, or you're going to have to spend more time flaring them off. And that's really it. I don't know that it's going to change significantly. I don't think the lock times are going to change. I think it might be a little bit easier to stay in that sweet spot to fire missiles, but I don't think it's going to be massive. I don't know. You can fight me, Knight. I can see your face, but
Yeah, he has an opinion.
but
We're gonna let him sit on it for just a second. Nope. 3, 2,
but
1. Okay.
all right, go.
Night Cobb, how do you feel about how master modes may affect missiles and torpedoes?
I think it's my only big thing, and this is what I'm hoping anyway, because I think it's got to come in conjunction with the changes to their heat gameplay. Like, I think if I'm maneuvering and I'm through, because the big thing with master modes that I think is going to change the game is it's going to make IR missiles a lot more viable. Because somebody brought it up in chat, I think it was Juro or somebody. It was like, yeah, everybody, EM and cross section are the way to go right now. IRs suck. And it's because most ships generate heat. And if they have a low IR signature, and this is especially true of light fighters, like, it doesn't change. It doesn't change the more they're throwing their boosters. It doesn't change the more they're firing energy weapons. It doesn't change the more that they're consistently maneuvering to change their position in combat or burning hard to get away and disengage. I feel like master modes, especially because you've reduced the ranges so much and you've increased the likelihood of a chase dynamic where somebody's got to make a really solid decision about how they disengage from combat, or if they're just heavily engaged in the the close range maneuvering and stuff like that. If you make a mistake and you allow your opponent to get a lock on you with an infrared missile and you've been burning hard and firing a lot of weapons, stand by. That one's coming. And it's going to be hard to spoof, like real hard to spoof based on your energy signature. And I like that. That's the knife fight weapon. It becomes like the Sidewinder missile equivalent. Like, did you get into it? You've been laying on afterburner or, burning hard to like try and get away from somebody. If they can close the distance with you and then get within close range, like, stand by. Like, infrared missiles became really deadly and really like your kill shot weapon if you can get a lock solution. And that works so much better in close range combat with high maneuverability. Based on the way they're doing master modes and stuff like that. It's all about that 6 degrees of freedom and stuff. If I apply vertical boost, and I'm 200 meters away from somebody, that'll take the pip right off of me, and that's the idea of, that more dynamic close range combat that I think they're shooting for. And that's why I would keep like infrared missiles as like the more. Yeah, exactly. It should be the super fast and stronger lock based on high energy, high heat output, and I think that's how you balance it, right? Ships that are just going in a straight line.
I agree with you.
Go ahead.
100%. That's true, right? So, but you're assuming that they're going to adjust missiles along with master mode in some way, and I don't know if they will.
I think they already are.
They have
to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
So, maybe.
I'm sure it's occurring on the Squadron 42 side, but I think that because we won't be able to, I'm operating under the assumption that you are not going to be firing missiles at anything other than your maneuver speeds. I don't think you're going to be operating at whatever super cruise, whatever you want to call that.
Well, you won't be able to access them anyway in theory, which is unfortunate. Because I think, like you said, that sweet spot is going to be when they try to break and run. And if they do it while you're looking at them, you're just going to thumb over to missiles, max out your load, and fire.
Yeah, and I agree. But I like that gameplay.
As their shields are going down and they're slowly accelerating, here comes this missile faster than they are.
Yeah,
and it's gonna damage them pretty good.
Yeah,
and I don't really move if they make it like it used to be. It was really hard to turn at high velocities. It's really hard to turn at high velocities. So, and hopefully they do something.
So for my thing though is like I always feel like there's got to be a counter. My counter to that would be is if they're preparing and they're thinking about how they disengage, and it's like, this shit is not going my way. I'm gonna set my flare count to 10. I'm gonna leave a little bit of boost in the tank and get ready, and I'm gonna have to time it. They're gonna fire off a missile. I need to side strafe, vertical boost, wherever you got the strongest thrusters. Boost that right as the missile's coming in, as they see it on their radar, and they know it was close, 10 flare count out, and that was the only way that they were going to spoof it off in a light fighter that's been, its heat's been coming up perpetually over, a sustained engagement. And, maybe it is also like, maybe there is the idea, like, hope you've got some hotkeys memorized for like taking down your weapons, because maybe if you shunt power off of weapons and stuff, like, okay, I'll kill a little bit of heat that way too. Or maybe it's so risky enough that I'm going to dump the shields just to flare this missile off.
Shields are going away anyway.
Well,
exactly.
Once
right?
you transition,
you're dead one way or the other.
And your weapons are off too. So once you switch,
I'm talking about the initial disengagement before you've gone into like, what is it? The cruise, cruise equivalent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Again, I think it boils down to, I think they're going to hit more. It may change when we decide to use them a little bit, but I think they're still just going to hit more.
Yeah,
because they're going to be harder to deal with.
Well, and the other,
I think they'll just change to a timing game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a timing game of you flare too early, you flare too late, and I think that becomes more of the thing for master modes.
Yep. And I think that there's a flip side of that coin for torpedoes and larger ships. The larger ship trying to make its getaway. Okay, well, you can't flare them off, but the torpedoes are slower, and so you don't want to fire them. You have to make sure you fire them so that the torpedo has enough time to close with the target before they zoom away. Because otherwise, you wait too long, or you fire too soon, or something like that. Torpedoes being slower. If you're right up
plenty
on
of time
target,
for the point defense systems to take it all down too.
Yeah, but and if you're too
and
close,
you increase
they
that
don't
time.
arm. You can't fire those at a couple hundred meters. Because they won't.
You're talking about the Hunt for Red October thing?
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Remove the safeties.
That's a real thing, by the way.
Yeah. I think
grenades have the same problem. You shoot a grenade, it's got to rotate X amount of times before it arms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. I think I want
to talk mines, because I think that is the most.
It's about what I was going to get into, because we've still got a good amount of time, and I think we all have opinions on mines. So mines actually I'm just gonna double check before we get into it, just to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn.
And we didn't talk bombs. I can go through my quick notes real quick on that, and it's really short.
I don't think now's a good time to talk about bombs, just because I think so bombs, I think, was a very hurried implementation, because of getting the A2 out, and it was this is what we can get out in this amount of time, and they hadn't touched them until they started thinking about the A1, right? The Spirit A1.
Yeah.
And so I think revisiting bombing will be, a good time to revisit bombing will be when they revisit bombing with the release of the A1, because I don't think the A1 is going to come out with bombing being in the state that it is. I think that they're going to, weapon content team is working on, ammo types, but after they get into that, I think they're probably going to get assigned a sprint to work on more bombs and work on bombing to make it feel better. Because right now it's not a good place. It's not like with missiles and guns and everything
place.
Where I just think it's a really lame implementation. And I think
it's because it's the God button. CIG, go watch my video on bombing.
Yeah.
Soldier's opinion, bombing. I break it down.
Yeah.
I promise you it'll be better if you do that.
Yeah, bombing doesn't have the level of depth and hasn't had the level of balance back and forth that torpedoes, missiles, and guns have had, and so I think it's
bombing requires pre-planning, and Tree has already said planning is the number one game loop, the first game loop of Star Citizen, and bombing should require planning.
Yeah.
So.
But with mines, I wanted to bring up mines because mines actually got a sprint, got some work on them during Q2 and 2022, Q1 2023. So they've been worked on recently. Don't know how much work. We don't know the extent of that work, but it was mentioned in the monthly reports, and it was on the progress tracker. So I was like, okay, they went back and they did some more work on mines, and yet we still do not have a mining ship, a mine-laying ship in game. And so I wanted to see, ask your guys' thoughts as far as speculating what your thoughts are on mines and how they might fit into this greater equation, because the whole balancing of energy weapons and ballistic weapons and missiles and torpedoes isn't complicated enough. We also have to add mines.
You're okay,
mines to the equation. So we're going to start with Night Cobb, because I started with you, Tira, on the last one. We only
all right, don't
have
take all the good
Nautilus.
stuff, Night Cobb. All right, jeez.
Yeah, we only have the Nautilus thus far for mines, and they haven't talked a lot about mines other than the lore and the release of the Nautilus. So what do you think, how do you think mines are going to fit into all this?
I know how they probably want them to fit in, but God, I would just take them out, CIG. There's my hot take.
Can I
Get rid of
read
them.
my first sentence? Mines suck right now as a concept.
Yeah, it's just not a good. It's honestly such it's a struggle of an idea, my friend. In three-dimensional space, unless you increase the environmental hazards to such a point as to force other ships to navigate certain lanes, like it is, it's utterly pointless. Like I can't even imagine a space navy being like, you know what we need, guys? We need to start laying down some mines. That'll help us out. That'll help us out a lot. That'll help us out in three-dimensional space. Just put them everywhere, though. Big clouds of mines. And I struggle with that because
there are natural game cannellation points though in jump points.
Yes, I got you. I know, and they can make those. They can make those, and I get it. And that's an idea. It's an idea. I don't think they should waste time on that idea, like at all. Because, and the truth of this is, right? Like, why would I put a dumb mine when I've got these things like orbital missile sentries?
Well, but the orbital,
I'd rather
missile
stagger an area with those.
Could be automated, and that basically makes it a giant mine.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? They already have them. They have orbital missile sentries around Lagrange point stations. Like, why do we care about mines? It's dumb. Just get rid of them.
So before I give you my thoughts,
save yourselves the trouble, guys.
Is that it?
That's it.
I got more than that.
Yeah, I want to hear Atiro. I want to hear what you have to say, because I disagree, Night Cobb. But
right now we have homing mines.
That's fair.
Nemo mines, which is neutralize and employ mine ordnance. So that's your demining and your mining tool, which is really not a mine; it's a UAS.
It's a drone.
Right?
Yeah, that's the drone.
It's a drone.
It comes with a drone.
It's a drone, right? And then you have sentry mines, which apparently are going to house something like 2 size 2 guns. Let's be real, that's a joke. All right, unless you're in a light fighter, right? That's not great. All right, so again, we were rapping about this earlier today because we were just, how would you make this work? Because you're right, in three-dimensional space, you're gonna have to have a lot of damn mines for it to make a difference, right? Like, I'm gonna blockade this planet with a crap ton of mines. That's what I'm gonna do. So, right. So density is key, and that's going to be your first problem, is how do you create enough density in three-dimensional space for the minefield to be at all useful? And outside of jump points, I think that's going to be hard, right? Because these things got to be in orbit, they got to be stationary. You can't put them in atmosphere, which means I can always go in on the other side of the planet and slow boat it around and still attack you. But I don't know if you noticed, in addition to those 3 things that the whatever it's called ship is going to carry, they also said trap and capture, which is synonyms kind of, but so some type of tractor mine they're interested in doing. So like if you apply like 14 tractor mines, you snare somebody's ship and they can't leave, that'd be funny. So things we're thinking about, right? So naturally, these things need to be like in a low power state, so they're almost undetectable, right? That's like the most effective use of mines in three-dimensional space, is that you cannot see them until you're in the middle of them, right? So that means by their very nature, these have to be. I mean, stealth is the wrong word. They can be
shit,
stealth.
guys. I just realized we're not dying to invisible asteroids, right? Those are the mine tests.
They're
Those
already
mine
in
tests.
game.
tests.
That's right.
That's-
That's
They're
right.
already
That's
in
why-
game, guys.
Already in game.
You want to know why you die and you don't see anything? It's because you ran into a mine.
That's right.
Solve
The
it.
Nautilus
Solve it.
is
It's not a bug. It's a
homing mine.
feature,
It's a
guys.
homing mine.
It's a feature.
the Nautilus
It's in
is already
development.
available to NPCs. We just don't have it
Yeah.
for players yet, and the NPCs are
That's
are
right.
mining the asteroid fields.
NPCs are.
Yeah. CIG is just laughing every time they see that issue council report. They're like, I died again to another invisible asteroid. They're like, these
you
mines are
didn't.
working out great, guys.
Perfectly
even see 'em
balanced.
coming.
Great game design. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So as a part of that, though, when you do find yourself in the middle of them, they need to have shields because they got to be survivable. Because right now, they're a little thing carrying size 2 lasers with no shields is going to pop like a grape. It probably needs to be able to move a little bit, right? So that it's kind of got a little bit of evasive maneuver once it goes active. And it's only going to go active for a limited amount of time, right? Hard to detect. We already talked about that. Powered down. I think CIG needs to be very clear that mines are expendable assets. They're like missiles, right? They shouldn't cost more than missiles. It doesn't matter that they have guns on them or whatever. Like they're expendable. You drop mines, they're going to last a certain amount of time, and then they're going to go away. And they shouldn't. I think this idea that they want us to like tend minefields is absurd. We don't tend minefields today, right? You drop a minefield, right? From a U.S. perspective, because we're not freaking war criminals looking to murder babies, right? We put a minefield down. It has a lifespan. When that lifespan is up, they either detonate in place or they completely shut down and become inert.
Yeah.
So we don't just leave mines scattered all over the battlefield, and it takes an act of Congress to even put mines in place to begin with. Right, that would have to be some type of large-scale ground combat operation, high-intensity combat, for us to even consider using them. So that's another thing. I think don't even have us think about maintaining minefields. That's silly.
Yeah, and you bring up the issue with like, how do you deal with the law gameplay?
Yeah,
It's my mine that I laid, so if anybody
Hits
like
that,
gets exploded by it,
now it's my fault.
like,
So I'm
yeah, it's my
5
fault.
systems away, and I get like a level 5 crime stat.
yeah,
You're like, son of a bitch, I didn't do anything.
yeah, and
It's
it
like
doesn't
5
have
days later.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like the player or the group of players that I intended that mine for. It's just some random
Exactly.
chum that just came in there and was like, dude, I wasn't paying attention and I fucking hit this
I hit
mine.
this mine.
Like there's too much in this game already that's complex enough. I just feel like mines were just never necessary. And honestly, CIG, you got a way out of this, man. That Nautilus is a cool looking ship. Just make it do something else. You want another cruiser to add into the game, or somewhere in the
It'd be another
How big
patrol
is it?
boat.
Yeah, sure,
So it's an auxiliary ship. I got yelled
I-
at by like one guy in the comments of my cap ship videos. Like, well, what's the Nautilus? The Nautilus is an auxiliary ship that has no capital size components. It is
not a capital
mine
ship.
layers are aux
Yeah.
ships.
Yeah.
Right.
When it comes
why I didn't
to
include it in the
combatant naval ships, the smallest capital ship is the Polaris. And not gonna count the 890 or whatever because it's not a combatant ship; it's a fucking cruise ship. But the Nautilus isn't a capital ship. So I have thoughts on.
I'm not done with my comments though. I have
Okay,
more.
sorry,
Hold on.
keep
I'm
going.
not done.
Sorry,
I got more
let you
shit to
go.
go. But I love
Keep going.
your
said they were short.
enthusiasm. I did not. I did not say these comments were short. I have a lot of comments on these. So we talked about EMP mines is a thing. I don't think it would be. I know CIG is thinking that route, and I think that's silly. So please don't do that. It's not going to have the effect you think it is, unless you can put it in such a way that, like, EMP becomes so strong that from like low orbit you can knock a ship and it will just fall to the ground, which I think players would find more of a hassle than fun gameplay. Right. So the final two things. So we could have EW, right? Because I separate EMP gameplay, which is child gameplay, from electronic warfare gameplay, which is should be a far more complicated and skilled gameplay, right? Go watch my hour and 45-minute video on EW and why it's a challenging subject. But it is one of our principal defenses in the United States Navy to protect our ships, right? In the Army, it is less so, but we still have electronic warfare platforms, right? So these kind of could act as a extension of that capability. So you could put them in orbit over your base. And if you're in a PvP conflict, these could allow you to try and reach out. I love that your dog is running around inside the hologram because I can see her.
She is wound up. I apologize.
No, it's great. I love her. But you could use that to try and hack and or affect the electromagnetic spectrum using these mines to emit, and they're expendable, right? So you don't care if they get destroyed. All you're trying to do is disrupt your opponent's attack, right? So they would be good for that. And then of course the we called that the Blasco mine, right? Because we play a Battlefield, and Blasco has a little expendable that just jams everything, right? Makes it so you can't get your information. And that's a good thing for a minefield to do, right? And you don't even have to have consistent depth and density of your minefield. It could just be random, so that as these guys are maneuvering on approach, they're randomly their shit's going on and off, and it's confusing them, and it's influencing their ability to coordinate their attack. And the other thing, of course, is early warning, right? So we haven't really talked about linking. I think we may have talked about this when we briefly talked about recon, the idea of like a ghost or a tracker or a terrapin linking to a larger ship that it's based out of, and then your little bubble of vision proceeds out from the larger ship, and they can see what you see, and that way you serve as a reconnaissance asset for that larger ship to make plans, operations, whatever. This is basically a static version of that. You link that to, say, a ground station, right? That is your base. You have these over your base, and for your base, it acts as early warning, right? Beyond what, say, something on the ground would be able to see, you could put this further up in orbit. So that's my last kind of thing. And you don't tend to it. When it goes away, you go replace it. Anyway, so those are my mine kind of ideas. I think the most useful ones are perhaps the non-lethal options that provide some other creative solution to seeing or influencing the battlefield. So there I go. That's it. Tree, over to you.
So I have a few things, and I'm not going to go deep into depth, but I'm just going to provide a few things that for people to chew on, and then I'll close this out because it's already 5:35 my time. So the mines do have the ability.
Going to go to bed in like 20 minutes, man.
Yeah. The mines do have the ability to maneuver. They do have an ability to maneuver, and I think that before the era of master modes, I think that mines were like ships can fly at this speed. There's no way that I'll just be able to boost away. Blah blah blah. I think that with master modes and people maneuvering at much lower speeds, if a mine can is basically undetectable because it's just a warhead with some chemical thrusters attached to it, then if you get too close, they can do a quick jettison to get into your point of impact.
Part of the ship.
Follow. Thank you so much for the follow.
Part of the crew. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
They should have an ability to home, and they don't have to necessarily get close to your ship or make physical contact. It's just like with the because they talked about it with flak, where they can make ammo that just explodes based off of proximity. Well, if the mine doesn't have to actually touch you, it can get to within a certain range and then blow up. Because the other, I think, misconception is everybody's like, oh, if it's a size 5 mine, it has the same payload, warhead payload that a size 5 torpedo does. No, a size 5 mine should have the same payload as a size 9 torpedo, or whatever, a significantly larger.
Because you're
And
an idiot for hitting it and deserve to be punished.
yeah, because
Is that what's going on in Cobb's mind right now?
Yeah, if you are a fighter and you wander into a minefield, and then you aren't paying attention and you let one get within too close, boom, you're gonna have a really bad day. And that's where the size 2 guns come in too, because if you wander into a minefield within, and there's several of them that are within range of you, and they all activate, and they get to put on a good accurate burst on you because they're able to turn really quickly. They can make your day really badly, and you don't know where the ammo's or the shots are coming from. You just know that you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this is even more, the explosive ones are even more deadly to ships that don't maneuver quickly. If you put them, that's why they showed it, the Nautilus, flying into the path of a Kraken. The Kraken turns, at the speed of snot and winter, and so if you lay mines in very close, and not, you don't have to be right up in front of the Kraken, because the Kraken has a size 8 turret, a dual size 8 turret. But if you put your whole payload out in front and it can't get away, and these things are homing as the Kraken is turning down here and they're going down this way, bad day. And it may not be enough to destroy the Kraken, but it's, potentially multiple size 7 to size 9 torpedoes blowing off, or cooking off in fairly close proximity to the Kraken. That's a very effective weapon. But I think the premise of mining a jump point probably isn't the right direction, because we know that they've talked about they don't want people to be able to camp jump points. And jump points are kind of going to be more porous and have multiple points of entry. I think the way that mines come into play is with player controlled stations and facilities in the future, and that's why I don't think it's a priority, because we can't control stations and facilities. But I think with what they've talked about with the Rastar tool. The Rastar tool is going to be able to not only allow you to build your own settlement, homestead on a planet, but the goal is to be able to use that tool to make things, they said, in space or in orbit. And to me, that is very suggestive of either building your own small space station or building your own asteroid facility, which is also in development. I also think that we're going to have the ability to, if you find a station that is abandoned or a asteroid facility that is abandoned, you can move on in, and you can't, I own this, I built it, but you can be utilizing it, and then you can use mines to defend it. And you don't have to put mines, mine a huge area, but you do, you put a handful over here and a handful over here, and you don't have to mine the entire area around it. But if somebody comes in and they're making their approach in, especially if they mean to board your station, and they're coming along in their Legionnaire or their Valkyrie or their Cutty Steel in order to, board your station and, take what's on it, and they run into your minefield, whether it's guns or explosives, they're going to have a really bad time. And it like Atira said, make them cheap as snot. And so that way it's a throwaway thing. But I do agree, the idea of having to maintain them, it's like, no, you don't have to use your drones to maintain their position. You just use the drones to recover them. That way you can deploy them for a while, you're using them, and then you go back and you pick them up. I
don't even know why I would do that. I would just hit a button and they all blow up in place. Done.
Yeah. Whatever
game
you
comes
want to
through,
do.
sweeps them up.
Yeah. If you want to blow them up, you can do that. If you want to pick them up and move them somewhere else, that's up to you. I don't think that, if they're already going to build drones, I don't think it's a huge gameplay challenge to make it so that way you can recover them with the drones. Because they should be a lot cheaper than a size 9 torpedo, but I wouldn't say that they would be like, the same price as a can of, ammo for a size 1 cannon on a Ursa or something. Those are my thoughts on mines, because I agree with 6 Degrees of Freedom space, in the game that we have prior to master modes, they don't make a lot of sense. But if we are able to have ownership of, or claim an area, being able to lay them in a, or with, they talked about being able to program a sort of formation for them. I think that would be how, if you're not just dropping them in front of a ship, but you want to lay a minefield, you use the drones in order to
Tactical
maneuver
mine
them
laying.
into place. Yeah, and say, okay, I want this spread. You click and drag in this spread with this many mines, and that way, this is how much area they cover. This is the space in between them. The sort of formation that they're in. Whether you have just a straight line or a cube with some depth. It's up to you. And it
That'd be amusing to see, actually.
Yeah, I think there's potential for good gameplay. I don't think we're anywhere close to it because we're not going to have our own asteroid facilities or stations that we can, build or even take charge of anytime soon. But I think when that sort of
we had one, and then they added gameplay to it.
Yeah, I think when that comes into the game and people are fighting over territory because it's useful, or facilities and stations because you can make use of them, as a base of operations that's not planet side. I think laying mines in order to say, okay, I can lay a bunch of mines here and a bunch of mines here, and that way I don't have to spend as much time focusing on defending these areas. I can focus on defending these areas or patrolling these areas, if that makes sense. Because
you need a lot of space hazards to make that a thing, though.
You do need a lot of space hazards, and that's a
well,
logistical
not
thing.
if it's point, not if it's point defense. But you're right. If you're trying to influence how someone maneuvers in open space, yes, you would have to have a lot of space terrain, right, to force them into certain areas so that you could deny. If it is a player-controlled station, which we had SPK, and it used to not have a stupid satellite covering it, and you could do whatever the fuck you wanted there, including murdering each other to your heart's content, and then they put Crusader security there. They gave us that, they could have experimented with that gameplay using SPK. We can't do that now. So maybe we'll experiment with it in Pyro. Right? If there is a place in Pyro that an org could take over and battle to keep, then you have to go to that point to take it from them. Because it's a point defense, then mines make sense, right? But you could close off one side of it in theory, and they can only come at you from one direction, which means now I can kind of focus on the other direction as far as ship and manned defense.
Yeah,
and you're right. Any type of terrain without sufficient hazardous terrain, though, it's never going to affect navigation.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to use them to say you're going to go this way. But I think if you have an asteroid facility in an asteroid field, and you have people that want to take it from you, or if they want to destroy it, well, you either have to shoot at it with torpedoes from far away, and I can shoot those down with my turrets easy, or you have to get in close and try and shoot those turrets and damage them. Okay, well, if you get in close, you have, congrats, I have mines, and you have to dodge those mines or not get shot by them. It's just it's a force multiplier that, could be potentially, deployed quite cheaply. And I don't think they're a difficult thing to implement for CIG compared to balancing some of the crazy ammo types. Like for me, adding mines is a lot easier for CIG to make viable and balanced in terms of static defense than, adding the goofy ass, distortion bullets, or if that makes sense. Those are just my thoughts.
Agree with Todd, though. Let's get a variant out of that ship that is so we have another wedge in space, and instead of the Galaxy, which has no combat variant, okay, let's get with the Naughty. All right, let's give it a gunship variant, and it can be like give it a couple extra defensive turrets, and then it's got those two big forward guns on it, and we'll have another flying Dorito, but a combat Dorito, and it'll be awesome.
Are you going to bed too soon, Nightcup? Are you?
I know he's yawning more than I am. Good grief, man! Come on, I haven't even had dinner yet, man.
I'm sorry. It was because I was outside earlier today and I got sun, and you guys can tell I'm not used to sun.
He also mines bore him.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very tactile. That's my problem with mines.
Yeah, that's
Like,
the only thing I think
somebody
about
put it
them
best
being
for me.
useful is laying them in front of a Kraken or an Idris that won't turn on a dime at all. And you can put your minefield out in front of them, a couple thousand meters, and they're not going to be able to turn to miss it as the mines are maneuvering to get in their way, and they're going to have a hard time shooting them.
900 years in the future, Cobb. 900 years in the future.
with space fighters. With space fighters, so it is what it is.
Yeah. I got it. I'll set that aside.
But
I think, like I said, somebody put it best for me is,
like in my video, I talked about a lot about with boarding actions, not just boarding ships, but boarding stations and facilities. And if you're going to want to defend your station or facility from, not only from attack, your close in. A strafe attack from a heavy fighter, or your gladiator coming in and launching size 5 torpedoes to try and hit aspects of your weapons or whatever on your station or your facility. If you got mines, it's a really good deterrent, especially when all of a sudden one of them goes off and you don't know where the rest of them are. It instantly changes the dynamic of the battle really quickly. And if you're in a Legionnaire, well, that would fucking suck. Oh, okay, well, there goes first squad. They're gone now. So it's just us, and we don't know where the rest of those mines are. And, we just started taking fire. You can't see where it's coming from because the mines are damn near undetectable when they're not firing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My point was, and somebody put it, is like, mine gameplay seems so meh. And the reason I think people would say that is, like, because you said it, it's a static defense. Now, we're making a lot of assumptions. This is in the days of like server meshing and like this is where we have like thousands of people on a given server, because otherwise I don't want to say it's utterly pointless, because but it's close to, unless it's like you said, in that very tactile moment of a ship laying out mines as another ship is barreling down on course and can't easily change directions. But other than that, man, like your mind laying the mines, like, man, I hope these go well one day. I won't be here for it. Odds are good. But, unless I know the battle's coming and it's like one of those things and I can be here for it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're doing the prep. Yep. And I think that's going to be kind of rare. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it is one of those things like the org is coming for us, guys.
Well, think about how many times you've seen that conversation, and Night Cobb, you're in every Discord, so I'm sure you've seen this multiple times, where people talk about how are you going to defend your settlement, your outpost. And
when you're not online.
When you're not online, and like, are you going to have bubble shields or whatever? Okay, well, your station's probably going to have a shield, and it'll have point defense weapons and stuff. Asteroid facilities maybe as the same thing. We don't know. We don't know how that's going to work out. But, adding another layer to that defense is mines that are very difficult to detect, explosive ones that have a big payload, and they also have maneuvering ability, and then the turreted ones, if you got enough of them shooting at you, and you have a hard time seeing them to shoot back. It's a force multiplier that is cheap. And to me, that is if we don't have something that is equivalent to that for your ground bases, I think that is something that it helps to push people to say
really, really tiny ground station with 2 micro, like negative S1 turrets.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, they want to
have all it does is shoot people.
Yeah, they people want to have their everybody's all excited about building their own settlement, building their own base, and doing this and that on the ground. Well, if your base on the ground is less defendable because you don't have shields and you can't lay a minefield around it, that suddenly makes it a lot less valuable versus, I found this abandoned asteroid facility and I'm going to use that as my base of operations, and I'll lay a bunch of mines around it and have some automated turret defenses, and this is 5 years down the line or something like that. But that's, to me, that's much more interesting than the proposition of how do you defend your outpost, your homestead. Well, shit. Yeah.
Salty has the best idea. the Trollmaster 9000 mine, which is just 2 mines connected by a cable. You hit the cable and they swing around and slam into your ship.
It's a garrote wire. Yeah.
It's a garrote mine. Could be a net. Could be a net like 4 or 5.
Oh yeah, no, it's a net that does distortion
Bob is
damage.
so triggered right now.
It's a distortion net. Yeah. And it just wraps around your ship,
Yeah,
and it
and then it just shuts you
disables
down.
the entire ship, and yeah, everybody on board the ship gets hit with the what are those guns that they're building that are the electric guns?
Oh yeah, the lightning. Brand.
The distortion arcs
The
across the
tasers.
gravity plating,
They're like
and everybody just
tasers.
zaps.
Cobb,
them
I'll let
all
you talk
over.
to Salty about that particular mine setup. I know you'll have a great conversation about it.
Unless you guys have any other thoughts, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up before Night Cobb gets angry at me. And
We're talking
I'm not
about
angry.
mines.
no,
I'm
I'm just fucking with you. I'm just thinking
I'm
about
amused.
this isn't okay. For clarity, this isn't just me saying this is what I want. This is me spitballing ideas of how CIG can make it viable, because they already sold the
Nah,
ship.
this is what you
Yeah.
want them to do. We know. Don't try and
this is-
sugarcoat it any other
we're
I
way.
gonna
love-
get
I love the
mines
Nautilus.
no matter
Yeah,
what, right?
we're gonna get it, and
They've
it's,
committed to
yeah.
building a ship. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
know.
how do you make it not suck? And there
Yeah.
are utility mines and there are combat mines, and hopefully what we've said here will trigger somebody to start thinking, right, in a way to find a way to tactically employ these things that make sense. So
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of, okay, how does CIG make this a usable thing instead of like, oh, sweet, everybody's going to use the Nautilus just because it looks cool and it has the big guns on the front and a missile turret.
it does.
It does look cool.
Yeah.
And even without the mines, it's probably a viable ship even without the mines, because people are like, okay, well, it's got the size 7s on the nose. It also has a massive missile turret on the belly. A missile turret with a
See,
crap
and
ton
that's
of
why I
missiles.
think you should just redesign the ship and get rid of the gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed, but I don't think CIG is going to walk back from it.
No.
But it's
And
interesting to
again,
think
why
about
not?
just because they have recently worked on mines, and so it's
I
not
know.
we haven't thought about it since 2019. It's we're still thinking about it. We're still working on it. We just don't know what that is.
So they sold people on an idea, Cobb. They have to
Yeah.
fulfill it, right?
But
You-
they've already put the disclaimer in the pledge and that the ship can change. That was the concept.
It can. I don't think they want to. I mean,
I think
look,
it would be very
great military
unprecedented
minds-
for them to change it that
great
much,
military.
because that changes the entire
Great military
theme of
minds
the
are
ship.
not IG, right? So they know that mines exist in the real world, so they're replicating something like that in their game, right? and all they're doing is giving us tools, and we're gonna come to a point 5-6 years from now where you hit a mine and it kills you outright. And I'm gonna think back to this moment, Cobb, and I'm gonna laugh.
It's already happening. I don't know what you guys are talking about. They're in the game.
Yeah,
They're in
they're
the
in game.
They're in the game. I've hit
Okay, so-
3 of them, I think, already.
Night Cobb, next time that
We hit one
happens,
the other day.
We hit one the other day.
Yeah, but you do it on stream, and we need you to
Oh,
clip it,
Jura says my memory
and
will
so that
last.
way we can share it, and because we need to take this and we need to spread it across the community. I want everybody.
What, the mines are in the
believing this, that mines are in the game, and it's because we can't see them, and the NPCs are using them. And that little blip on your radar as you're flying through an asteroid field was actually an NPC Nautilus. Like, we need to make this.
Yeah, if you get on
we
it
need to
at,
turn
like,
it into a
midnight-
conspiracy theory.
Greenwich Mean Time, right? If you get on at midnight and you go out into the minefield, you might catch them
Mhm.
in the act.
Mine layers in game, guys. It's already
Yeah.
there.
Game,
The
it's already there.
NPCs are using it right now. It doesn't have an
What are-
interior. It's like the
What are they
Idris.
protecting? What are they protecting out there, Night Cobb? That's
They're
what we
not.
need to get to.
It's
get
Agents
down
of
to.
Chaos, man. Agents of Chaos. Just like, I'm going to put one right here. Why? Just because.
Just because it doesn't
Somebody's
matter.
going to hit it. Is it on the spline? Yeah, they'll hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
No players go to the OM points at the North and South Pole. Just keep it near the spline. It'll be fine. Somebody will hit it eventually.
All right.
There's-
I think that's a good place to wrap it up, unless you guys have any closing comments. But before we go, we have like 24 people hanging out in chat, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah,
We've seen
raid somebody.
I need a suggestion for a raid, and then while you guys are thinking of a suggestion for a raid, I just want to say thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Really appreciate the interaction in chat. It's been really good talking with all y'all. A lot of really good comments, and it's been fun watching the commentary go by as we talk. Night Cobb and Atira, again, thanks so much for being a part of this. It's been fun hanging out. I'd love to take up more of your time, but I'm getting hungry, and Atira needs to go to bed. And this has been really
old
awesome.
men need our sleep.
Yeah, it's a really good discussion. I think it was very productive, but it's also
Part of the crew.
ooh, got another follow.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
But I also just want to say thank you because having all you guys in chat and being a part of the conversation, it benefits StackUp.org. It gets exposure to the fact that the organization is doing good things, helping out veterans via the power of gaming. And if you watched an ad while you're hanging out with us, congratulations. That you watching that ad generates revenue for StackUp.org. Every little bit counts. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all of you. And if you're not a member of my Discord, please consider joining. We have conversations like this all the time. It's a really good place to hang out and talk Star Citizen, and things that are real, things that are entirely theory crafted, like mines. A whole bunch of good stuff. If you're looking for a good org to hang out and have fun with, Night Cobb and Atira are both in ammo, along with multiple people who are already in chat. So if you're looking for an org to be a part of, that's a good place to start for sure. How do I get back to?
Incidentally, I think it's based on size, so it's like it's not overall. It's like number of active members and time spent in game by player in the organization. But I think we popped up as like number 16 on the active org out of 82,000 the other day, which was pretty hysterical because like obviously there's much larger orgs that put much more people out there into the game, which is why we think it's by percentage. So like by percentage, we're doing as a 60 plus person org. We're in the game a fair amount. Yeah. I mean, it's silly, right? But yeah, number 16.
I'm going to make an executive decision. And because Ender is on the path to partner, I want to go ahead and show Starjump Ender some support. Starjump Ender and Starjump Grim have rated me in the past. They're really good people. Big fans of their work. So I'm going to go ahead and send a raid Ender's way. So if you guys want to go, he's actually playing Star Citizen right now. And he's also doing a charity drive for St. Jude's. So,
oh, nice.
Unless you hate kids, go watch Starjump Ender.
Wow.
Go watch. Help the kids.
Help the kids. So starting the raid.
Thanks, guys.
Over to Starjump Ender. Thank you very much, everybody. Y'all have a good evening.
Everyone.
Join the Discord. And go check out my YouTube because I got my video dropping tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. youtube.com/@tree0311. All right, 19 viewers ready to raid. So here we go. 07, everybody.
See you guys.